She walked into the bank as just another face in the crowd, dressed simply. But what no one knew was that Sarah Mitchell, the unassuming black woman standing at the teller window, owned the very bank that was about to humiliate her. The judgment started instantly, condescending glances, thinly veiled suspicion, and endless questions about her legitimacy. The teller, Karen Walsh, and the supervisor, Richard Bennett, didn't bother hiding their disdain. They saw her as a problem, not realizing they were confronting their boss. As the tension built in the lobby, Sarah remained calm, her quiet confidence hiding decades of discrimination she now faced again. What happened next left the staff stunned, the customers in disbelief, and the reckoning was just beginning. How far would justice go? The soft morning light filtered through the windows of Sarah Mitchell's penthouse apartment as she stood before her full-length mirror, deliberately adjusting her outfit. At 42, she had mastered the art of being misjudged. Today, she chose a simple suit instead of her usual designer suits. She paused for a moment, her fingers hovering over her Cartier watch, but then chose to put it back in its box instead of wearing it. She wanted to keep her outfit simple and casual. 25 years ago, her mother cleaned the bank Sarah now owned, scrubbing floors at night while studying for her GED. The memory of her mother's tears after being denied a small business loan at Nexi Bank still burned fresh in Sarah's mind. Now, as one of the most successful black women in banking, Sarah had orchestrated the quiet acquisition of Nexi Bank through her investment group, adding it to her growing network of regional banks across the Midwest. Recent complaints about discriminatory practices at the Minneapolis branch had caught her attention. Despite her ownership, she had kept her identity hidden from most employees, working behind the scenes to assess the true culture of her banks. Sarah tucked a $250,000 cashier's check into her simple handbag, a deliberate choice for today's surprise audit. "Time to see if anything has really changed," she whispered, removing her diamond earrings. In her reflection, she saw her mother's determination. Today wasn't just about catching prejudiced employees. It was about transforming a system that had humiliated her family and countless others. Sarah straightened her shoulders, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. The morning that would change everything had just started. Karen Walsh sat at her teller window, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the counter as she surveyed the morning crowd at Nexi Bank. After 15 years, she had developed what she called a sixth sense for trouble, though her colleagues privately knew it was just thinly veiled prejudice masked behind banking protocols. The morning rush had been the usual until Sarah Mitchell stepped into the bank. Karen's eyes narrowed, looking at her in the simple suit, plain slacks, and department store handbag. She watched as Sarah calmly filled out her deposit slip, her judgment already forming before a single word was exchanged between them. "Next, please," Karen called, her practiced customer service smile not quite reaching her eyes. As Sarah approached, young Marcus Thompson, the bank's newest intern, looked up from his training desk, immediately sensing the tension in the air. Sarah placed a $250,000 cashier's check and her identification on the counter. Karen's eyes widened in surprise, and her lips tightened into a thin line. "This is quite a large amount," she said, emphasizing each word as if speaking to a child. "We'll need extensive verification. Where did you get this check?" Despite Sarah providing multiple forms of identification and following every procedure, Karen became increasingly difficult and uncooperative. Other customers shifted uncomfortably, watching the scene unfold. "Perhaps," Karen said, her voice dripping with condescension, "you should try cashing this at your regular branch, assuming you have one." The last words hung in the air like poison as Marcus clenched his fists beneath his desk, all too familiar with that tone. Sarah stood motionless at Karen's window, her calm appearance masking a storm of memories. 20 years earlier, in this very bank, she had held her mother's hand as Margaret Mitchell's small business loan application was rejected, despite having a perfect credit rating and a solid business plan. "It's just not the right fit," they had said, their eyes never meeting hers. That day had changed everything. The memory dissolved into a montage of triumphs, graduating summa cum laude from Harvard Business School, landing her first investment banking position, and quietly building her empire. Each success had been a step toward this moment. Through clever holding companies and discreet investment groups, she had systematically acquired banks with histories of discrimination, transforming them from within. As Karen made an exaggerated show of calling her supervisor, Sarah noticed Marcus, the young black intern, watching intently from his desk. His expression reflected her own past experiences, the familiar pain of being judged before speaking a word. She offered him a subtle, knowing smile. Richard Bennett, the supervisor, emerged from his office with an air of self-importance. Sarah could read his type instantly, the kind who believed his position granted him authority over others' dignity. Through the glass walls of the office behind him, she caught sight of her portrait among the board members' photos, recently installed, but clearly unnoticed by the staff. "Let's see what seems to be the problem here," Richard announced, directing his attention solely to Karen, while deliberately ignoring Sarah's presence. They are unaware that Sarah's visit is to witness firsthand some of the complaints against the branch, and they were walking right into it. The tension in the bank lobby crystallized as Richard Bennett approached, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. His practiced smile didn't reach his eyes as he addressed Karen instead of Sarah. "Is there a problem here?" The question dripped with condescension. Richard's interrogation began methodically, each question more invasive than the last. "What's your employment status? Annual income? How long have you banked with us?" His tone grew increasingly hostile as Sarah maintained her composure, quietly documenting every interaction on her phone. Around them, the bank's regular business had ground to a halt. Customers, sensing the brewing confrontation, discreetly pulled out their phones to record. Some shook their heads in disgust, while others watched with the uncomfortable recognition of a scene they'd experienced themselves. Marcus, the young intern, hovered nearby, his name tag slightly uneven. His hands fidgeted with his tie as he witnessed the unfolding discrimination, torn between his instinct to speak up and the fear of losing his job. His eyes met Sarah's briefly, filled with apology and shame. Richard's demeanor shifted from professional disdain to barely concealed hostility. "Ma'am, if you can't properly verify these funds, we'll have to ask you to leave." His hand moved toward the security desk phone. "I'd hate to involve the authorities, but protocol is protocol." Sarah remained steady, her voice clear and measured as she continued documenting every word. She requested the branch manager's presence, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Richard's growing agitation. The security cameras whirred silently overhead, capturing every moment of the confrontation. The air grew thick with tension as other employees gathered at the edges of the lobby, whispering among themselves. What had started as a routine transaction had evolved into prejudice and power dynamics, ready to explode. Patricia Anderson burst out from her office, her heels echoing through the now hushed lobby. Recognition flickered across her face as she processed Sarah's name, a name she'd seen recently but hadn't given proper attention. Through quick flashbacks, Patricia was seen at her desk, drowning in paperwork, absently clicking through crucial emails about the bank's new ownership. The branch manager's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of information she had dismissed as routine corporate communications. Her negligence in reading those memos now loomed large as she approached the standoff. Other employees clustered around their stations, pretending to work while watching the drama unfold. Sarah reached into her bag with deliberate slowness, withdrawing her driver's license. The plastic card caught the fluorescent light as she held it up, the name matching perfectly with the leadership documents Patricia had barely skimmed. The color drained from Patricia's face as the full reality of the situation crashed over her. Meanwhile, Karen maintained her rigid posture, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Richard continued his condescending outburst, oblivious to Patricia's growing horror. The security cameras captured every moment, their red lights blinking steadily in the corners of the lobby. The air grew heavier with each passing second. Customer conversations had died to whispers, all eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Marcus, the intern, had edged closer, his young face a mirror of the tension filling the room. Just as Richard launched into another patronizing speech, Patricia found her voice. "Mr. Bennett," she interrupted, her words cutting through his attack like a knife. "I believe you should stop talking immediately." Her voice carried the weight of someone who realized they were watching their career collapse in real time. Patricia's words hung in the air as she made the announcement. "Everyone, this is Sarah Mitchell, the new owner of Nexi Bank." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of Karen's clipboard hitting the floor and Richard's sharp intake of breath. Sarah moved to the center of the lobby with measured steps, her presence now commanding the space in a way that made her previous treatment even more stark. The security cameras continued their silent witness as she addressed the gathered crowd, her voice carrying years of determination and purpose. "My mother stood in this very spot 30 years ago," she began, trying to secure a small business loan. She was denied, not because of her credentials, but because of how she looked. Sarah's words resonated through the lobby, touching everyone present. She shared her journey, the systematic discrimination she'd witnessed, and her vision for changing banking culture. Marcus, the young intern, stood transfixed, tears welling in his eyes. When Sarah acknowledged him directly, speaking about the importance of representation in banking, his posture straightened with newfound pride. The other customers nodded in recognition, some wiping away tears of their own. The bank employees who had gathered to watch now shifted uncomfortably, especially those who had witnessed similar incidents but remained silent. Sarah concluded her address by looking directly at Karen and Richard. Today wasn't just about a transaction. It was about exposing a culture that needs to change, and change starts now. Karen stumbled through excuses, her voice trembling. "We were just following standard procedures." Richard attempted to justify his actions, citing bank policies and security protocols. But Sarah methodically dismantled each excuse, pulling up security footage on nearby monitors showing clear disparities in customer treatment. The evidence was damning. Split-screen comparisons showed other customers receiving prompt, respectful service, while minorities faced excessive questioning and delays. Sarah revealed a tablet displaying years of documented complaints against this specific branch. Other customers stepped forward, sharing their own experiences of discrimination. An elderly black veteran described being denied basic services. A Hispanic American business owner recounted having his credentials repeatedly questioned. Each story added to the growing weight of evidence. Patricia watched in horror as years of overlooked complaints surfaced. Her inbox notifications pinged repeatedly as Sarah forwarded dozens of ignored discrimination reports to corporate headquarters. "This branch," Sarah announced, "has the highest number of discrimination complaints in our entire network." Today wasn't just a random visit, it was the final test before implementing sweeping changes. The security footage continued to play, a silent but powerful testament to years of systematic bias. Richard's smug expression had completely vanished, replaced by the look of someone watching their career crumble in real time. Sarah wasted no time initiating changes. She called an emergency all-staff meeting, broadcasting live to every branch in the network. The atmosphere was electric as she outlined immediate reforms, comprehensive bias training, community outreach programs, and a new zero-tolerance discrimination policy. Karen and Richard were escorted from the building, their departures captured on dozens of phones. Their termination became immediate fodder for social media, symbolizing the changing times in the banking industry. Marcus, still processing the morning's events, received an unexpected promotion to customer service manager. His first task, implementing new inclusive banking practices that would serve as a model for other branches. His hands shook as Sarah handed him his new badge, but his eyes shone with determination. Patricia faced her own reckoning. Rather than termination, she was placed on probation with mandatory cultural competency training. "Your oversight enabled this culture," Sarah explained, "but your willingness to learn can help change it." The transformation extended beyond personnel changes. Sarah announced new loan programs for minority-owned businesses, simplified application processes, and community advisory boards. Security cameras were now paired with AI systems to monitor service equality. The day ended with Sarah addressing the remaining staff. Today marks the beginning of a new era in banking, one where everyone, regardless of their background, receives the respect and service they deserve. The story exploded across social media platforms. #BankingWhileBlack trended nationwide as former customers shared their own experiences of discrimination. Local news vans camped outside the branch, interviewing witnesses and community leaders. Karen and Richard faced public scrutiny as their history of biased behavior became widely known. Their LinkedIn profiles disappeared as other banks quietly removed similar employees, fearing they could be next. Marcus emerged as a symbol of positive change, leading a new initiative helping minority entrepreneurs navigate the banking system. His youth and enthusiasm, combined with his first-hand experience of discrimination, made him an effective advocate for reform. Patricia, humbled by her previous negligence, threw herself into learning. She became an unexpected ally, sharing her journey from passive enabler to active champion of change at banking industry conferences. The community response was overwhelming. New accounts flooded in, particularly from minority communities who had previously avoided traditional banking. Local business leaders praised the changes, creating partnerships for economic development programs. Sarah's transformation of Nexi Bank became a case study in corporate culture change. Other banks began implementing similar reforms, recognizing that inclusivity wasn't just ethical, it was good business. 6 months later, Nexi Bank stood transformed. The lobby buzzed with diverse staff serving an equally diverse clientele. Security footage now showed a different story: respectful interactions, prompt service, and genuine community banking in action. Marcus had exceeded all expectations, his minority business development program becoming a national model. His team of young, diverse bankers reflected the community they served, breaking down barriers daily. The branch's statistics told the story: customer satisfaction at record highs, discrimination complaints at 0, and a 200% increase in minority-owned business accounts. The transformation had sparked industry-wide changes, with other banks following Nexi Bank's lead. Sarah sat in her office, watching the security monitors that once captured discrimination, now showing equality in action. The story of Nexi became more than banking reform. It became a testament to perseverance, justice, and the power of transformative leadership.